Today, inshallah, we are going to complete Chapter 7, the money demand, the equilibrium interest rate, and the monetary policy. As you know that in the last class, we discussed the following table, which includes the number of switches, the average money holding, the average bond holding, interest earned, the cost of switches, and the last thing is, or the last column is the net profits. And we assume that we have different numbers of switches, and we assume that also that the household received a monthly income or a monthly salary of $600, and they have two alternatives. Number one, they can hold a cash, all of this amount as a cash money, or they can buy or divide these two, or this amount, or this income into two parts. Number one, they can hold part of this income as a cash or money holding. It's called the money holding. And the second part would go to, or they can buy bonds, or bonds holding, in order to earn interests, right? So, suppose, or according to this example, suppose that the interest rate equals 5%, right? And so, the interest rate equals 5%. The cost of a switch, or the cost per switch, equals $2. And here we have the number of switches. For the first case, as we mentioned, that the household preferred to hold the total income or the total amount as cash money. So they don't, or they did not buy bonds. صح? So in this case, the interest earned equals 0, and the cost of switching, they don't have bonds to sold at, so, or to sell at. So in this case, the cost of a switch is equal 0, and the net profits equal 0 as well. But let us suppose that the household decided to divide his income by two parts, or into two parts. 300 as a cash money, and 300, the left amount, which is $300, to be or to buy bonds. In this case, they will receive interests. They will receive interest by 5% of 300. So the interest earned equals what? The interest earned equals the interest rate times the average bond holding. The average bond holding. This is the interest earned. So for in this case, they will receive 5% times 300 equals how much? 15. This is what the interest earned for the first case, right? Now suppose that the household decided to sell this amount, $300, for one switch. لمرة واحدة بده يتحول من bonds لكاش for in one time. So he has to pay $2 because the cost per switch from bond to money equals 2. So in this case, the cost of switch equals 2. The net profit equals the interest earned, the net profits equals the interest earned, the total interest earned, minus the cost of switches. So for the first case, equals 15 minus 2 equals 13, right? And so on. Now, where is the optimal balance, or the case where, or gives the household the highest net profits? Where is it? At 16.5, which gives the household the highest interest, the highest net profits, right? Now suppose that the interest rate increased to 10%. So let's change or do a change in the different variables. The interest rate, the number of switches, the average bond holding, the average money holding, and the cost of switches. Let's do a change in step by step in these variables. So suppose that the interest rate increased to 10% instead of 5%. And all other variables are constant or remain constant. So suppose that the interest rate has been changed to 10%. What would happen? Where is the new optimal balance? So as you see, we assume that the average money holding remains constant, the average bonds holding remains constant, and so, but we have a new interest earned, because the new interest earned equals the new interest rate times the average bond holding. So our assumption is that a new interest rate is 10%. So let's write the new values of interest earned. For the first case, 0, the same. And then 300 times 10%, 30, 40, 45, 48. These are the new values of the interest earned, right? And the cost of switches remain constant because the number of switches and the cost per switch remains constant. So what would happen? We have a new net profits, which equals the new interest earned 0 minus 0, 0. 30 minus 2, 28, exactly. And then 40 minus 4, 36. 45 minus 6, 39. 40. So where is the new optimal balance? Exactly. So the last case is the new optimal balance. At this point, the number of switches are 4. The average money holding is 120. The average bond holdings equals 480, and so on, right? And the cost, the interest earned, the cost of switches, as you see, right? تمام؟ طيب. Suppose that the cost of switching increased. The cost per switch increased from 2 to 4. And all other variables remain constant. So suppose that the interest rate remains constant at 5%. So it equals 5%, and the cost per switch equals 4 instead of 2. What would happen, and where is the new, 4, exactly, okay, thank you. Where is the new equilibrium or the new optimal balance? This is the question. So we have to do the same. As you see, the number of switches remain constant, the average bond holding, money holding remain constant, and the average bond. So the interest earned also remains constant. But we have a change in the cost of switches. The cost of switches in this case equals 0. And number 2, the cost of switching equals 1 times 4. So it should be 4. And then 2 times 4, 8. 3 times 4, 12. 16, right? So the new net profit equals how much? 0 minus 0, 0. 15 minus 4, 11. 12. 10.5. And the last case, 8. So where is the new equilibrium or the new optimal balance? Number 2 or number 3. So I advise the household in this case to buy or to hold $200 as a cash or a money, and buy how much? $400, or to buy bonds by $400. This is the idea. تمام? طيب. So as you see, the change in one variable related to these columns are like the number of switches, the average bond holding, the average money holding, the interest rate, and so on. Will it change the optimal balance? صح؟ مظبوط؟ طيب, let's change the number of switches and all other variables remain constant. So suppose now that the number of switches change. Suppose 0, 2, 4, 6. Is there a change in the net profits or the optimal number of or the optimal balance? Yes. Let's do the calculation. So average money holding remains constant, the average bond holding remains constant, the interest rate remains constant, interest in also will remain constant, but we have a change in the cost of switching, because the cost of switching equals the number of switches times the number of switches. So in our assumption, the cost of a switch equals 2. صح? The cost per switch equals 2. So let's do the calculation, calculate the cost of switching. The cost of switching in this case, 0 times 2, 0. 2 times 2, 4. And then 2 times 2, 4, 8, 12. Exactly. So we have a new data for the net profits. For the first case, 0 minus 0, 0. 11, 16, how much? 22.5 minus 8, 14.5, and 12. So where is the new optimal balance? The new optimal balance which gives the household the highest net profits. تمام؟ إذن أعلى ربح وين بيكون عندي؟ when the household holds 200 as money and 400 as bond. صح؟ طيب, let's go to the theoretical and the assumptions for this theory. الاسامبشنز تبعت هذه الثيوري او النظريه هاي بتقول انه the household receives their income one time a month or at the beginning of the month. So let's come back to the assumptions. So as you see in these assumptions, we have four main assumptions for this theory. As you see, the first assumption is there are only two kinds of assets available to the households, money or bonds. So the household has two types of assets or two alternatives, money or bonds. يا بتحتفظ فيه كله money or bonds or both. Distribute it or allocate your income into money or bonds. And the second is the typical household's income arrives once a month and distributed or at the beginning of the month. وقتاش بيوصل دخله الراتب تبعك في أول الشهر. طب بس هذا الدخل يتوزع خلال فترات الشهر على أيام الشهر بدنا نفترض بأنه بمعدلات متساوية. تمام؟ So in this case or the third point is the spending occurs at the completely uniform rate. The same amount is spent each day. So if we assume that your income equals $2,100 a month, so it will receive this income at the beginning of the month, and you allocate this amount along the month with the same rate every day. So in this case, how much is the average spending, average daily spending؟ قديش انت بتنفق عملية لو بدي افترض هيك؟ هيكون عندي اللي هو average daily spending equals the total income received 2,100 over the number of days a month, 30 days. So this means that you can spend or you spend $70 every day. تمام؟ طيب. And the last point, the spending is exactly equals to the income for the month. يعني اللي بيجيك بتصرفه. لا في عندك shortage، لا deficit ولا surplus in your spending or expenditure. تمام؟ واضحة؟ Okay. So, according to our assumption that when you receive your income once a month and you allocate or you spend this income during the month or along the month. So there is no synchronization. ما فيش تزامن between the time that you receive your income and the outflows of this income. يعني ما فيش تزامن ما بين الوقت اللي وصل فيك اللي دخلك وصل او اللي استلمت فيه الدخل وبين ايش؟ وبين الانفاق. There is, it's called non-synchronization of income and spending. Non-synchronization means عدم التزامن ما بين وقت اللي بيجي فيه المصاري وبين الانفاق تبعها. So as you see, the mechanism between the timing of money inflow اللي هو mismatching means لو عدم التزامن، عدم التوافق ما بين الوقت اللي the time of money inflows to the households and the timing of money outflow of the households. ما فيش تزامن which is called the non-synchronization of income and spending. تمام؟ واضحة ولا عيدة الجزئية؟ إيه؟ تمام. هذا أخذناه هيك. هذا كله بيحكي في الكيس اللي هو التيبل هذا بيمهد له بس بدي اروح انا للoptimal balance او التوازن الامثل which is the level of average money balance that earns the consumer the most net profits. اي جزئيه هنا شايفين في التيبل هذا اللي بيعطيني اعلى net profits بيكون هو هذا الoptimal balance. هو هذا اللي بيحكي لي اياه قاعد هيك انه the optimal balance is the level of average money balance that earns the consumer the most net profits or the highest net profits. تمام؟ which is or taking into account ايش؟ الانترست rate earned on bonds and the cost paid for switching from bonds to money. تمام؟ إذن بدي اخذ بعين الاعتبار اسعار الفائده على البونز و cost of switching. وشفتوا لما عملنا changing في الانترست ريت وعملنا changing في الكوست of switching اتغير اللي هو النت بروفيتس والoptimal balance change. صح؟ and the highest or when the people or when the interest rate is high شو الناس بتشتري؟ bonds. صح؟ بس هي الفكرة. نعم. عدم توافق ما بين شو اسمه هذا التوقيت اللي بيوصل فيه الفلوس اللي هو الانكم وبين انك تنفقه. ما فيش توافق في التوقيت. يعني مش هذا لا يعني انه اذا انت استلمت $1000 بتصرفه مش في نفس الوقت. That's it يعني. It's called the non-synchronization of income and spending. تمام؟ طيب. Cost per switch. طيب. So let's come back to or go to this slide. As you see, the optimal average level of money holding is the amount that maximize the profits from money management. أنا بدور على وين؟ إن أخذ the highest net profits. مظبوط؟ طيب. The cost per switch multiplied by the number of switches بيعطيني إيش؟ The cost of switching. مظبوط؟ هيو. Where's the cost of switching? The cost of switching is what? The number of switches times the cost per switch. That's it. So, the cost per switch, as you see, the cost per switch, which is $2 in our example, times multiplied by the number of switches. Suppose it was 3. هذا إيش؟ the cost of switching. بس. مظبوط؟ طيب. طبعا it should be deducted or subtracted من ايش؟ من الانترست اند عشان نوصل لايش؟ للنت بروفيتس. So as you see, to reach the net profits شو عملنا؟ عشان اوصل للنت بروفيتس الكوست اوف سويتشز انخصمت من الانترست اند. So الانترست اند ماينس الكوست اوف سويتشنج عباره عن ايش بيعطيني؟ نت بروفيتس. هاي السلايد هيك بيحكي. So the cost per switch multiplied by the number of switches must be subtracted from the interest revenue to obtain the net profits from money management. تمام؟ طيب هذا حرجع له هالجيت بس بدي أوضح الشغلة. Let's go to the speculation motive for money. إنه مضاربة. To understand the idea and concept, suppose that you have a bond and the value of this bond is $1,000. You have a bond and the value of this bond equals $1,000, and you will receive an interest of 10% for 1 year. تاخذ عليه انترست قديش؟ 10%. هذا بدنا نسميه the old bond. هذا البوند القديم اللي معاك. It's called the old bond. So how much is the old bond هالجيت؟ لو بدي اروح ابيعه exactly اللي هو الانترست مضروبه في هاد زائد الانيشال amount of the bond حيكون عندي 1100. صح؟ طيب now suppose that the government issued a new types of bonds. اجت الحكومه قالت لك والله بدنا نصدر نوع جديد من البونز. suppose انه عليه 12%، 12%. يعني suppose انه طلعنا بوند جديد، هذا اذا نسميه the new bond وهذا الاولد بوند. النيو بوند هذا suppose it was $1,000 عليه 12%. إذن قديش قيمته لو بدي أجي أبيعه؟ $1,120. مين قيمته أعلى؟ البوند الجديد ولا البوند القديم؟ إذن ارتفاع سعر الفائدة. طب السؤال، لو أنا اللي معاي الأولد بوند اللي عليه 10% اجيت بدي ابيعه، يعني واحد suppose we have two persons مثلا مازن and أحمد. مازن has the old bond with 10%. أحمد purchased the new bond، اشترى البوند الجديد هذا. لو اجى مازن وبده يبيع البوند للناس اللي مين الناس بتفضل تشتري من أحمد ولا من مازن؟ من أحمد، لأنه هذا البوند الانترست ريت عليه أعلى. شباب ثاني، هلا واحد معاه بوند قديم عليه 10% 10%، وواحد اجت الحكومه اصدرت نيو بوندز عليهم 12%. طيب واحد جاي يشتري بوندز جديد حيشتري ب 14%، مزبوط، لانها which will give them highest or larger profits. صح مزبوط ولا لا؟ طيب عشان يقدر انه يبيع الاولد بوند شو بده يساوي؟ لازم يخفض سعر البوند. صح مزبوط ولا لا؟ اذا عشان مازن يقدر يبيع هذا يسوق to market his bond in this case he has to reduce the value of bond or the selling price of this bond. وبالتالي there is what? Inverse relationship between the interest rate and the value of or the volume of bonds. صح؟ إصدار بونز بأسعار فائدة أعلى معنى كده منزل قيمة البوند القديم. هي الفكرة. واضحة ولا أعيدها؟ عشان هيك أنا اضطريت أحكيها بالعربي لتوضح الصورة عشان ما تكونش complicated. تمام؟ طيب. So let's come back to the this slide. As you see that suppose the interest bearing bond was 10% and it has increased to 12. what will occur or what will happen. As you see, when the interest rates on bonds increased from 10% to 12%, the investors will try to sell the old bonds. بيجوا ايش بدهم يسووا؟ بقول لك مثلا في طلع عندي بوند جديد ب 12 I have to sell the old bonds واشتري جديد and to buy a new and to buying in new bonds with higher interest rates. صح؟ And at the same time no one has a willingness to buy the old bonds. ولا واحد عنده الرغبة a desire to buy the old bond. يعني مين العاقل اللي بده يشتري ابو البونز ابو 10% اللي قيمته 1000 ويسيب اللي بيعطي له انترست اعلى اللي هو 12%. This is the so in this case what would happen? At the same time no one has a willingness to buy the old bonds with the same price. At the same price no one can buy or has a willingness to buy the old bonds. The market value of the old bond would decline. Here's the idea. So as you see in this characters, so the interest-bearing bonds increased from 10% to 12%, leads to what? To a reduction or a decrease in the demand on the old bonds. صح? The demand for the old bonds would decline, and the investors will try to sell the old bonds with the same price, but they can't. So no one has the willingness to buy it with the same price. The market value of bonds would decline. Here's the concept. So as you see here, suppose I bought a bond for $1,000. واحد مشتري بوند ب$1000. تمام؟ That offers 10% interest rate and hold it for a year. طبعا هذا نفس المثال اللي شرحناه هنا وبالتالي there is no need to discuss it once again. The sum of the man checking account balances. Okay, let's go to analyze. نرجع له هلقيت هذا. The relationship between the interest rate and the quantity of money demanded. As you know that in the last class, or the last two classes, we discussed the relationship between the interest rate and the quantity of money demanded for transaction, for speculation. So this is the interest rate, and this is the quantity of money demanded. This is what? The money demand curve. The relationship between the interest rate and the quantity of money demanded is negative because the interest rate is what? The cost of money, of the cost of borrowing for money. So the increasing of interest rate leads to increasing of the cost of borrowing, and then exactly. So let's analyze the relationship between the interest rate and the quantity of money demand. The increasing interest rate leads to increasing the cost of borrowing. The increasing the cost of borrowing leads to what? A reduction in the quantity of money demanded. So we have an inverse or a negative relationship between the interest rate and the quantity of money demanded, which is illustrated in this diagram or figure. As you see, suppose this is point A. At interest rate 9, the quantity of money demanded, suppose it was $100. The increasing of interest rate to 12% leads to a reduction in to point B. Suppose the quantity of demanded for money declined to 70. So we have a negative relationship between the interest rate and the quantity of money demanded, or quantity demanded of money. طيب, let's go to the volume of a transaction. The volume of a transaction to buy things. Suppose that you want to buy flowers. تشتري طحين. And the price per sack of flour equals 100 shekels, right? And the quantity that demanded of the flour equals 3. Suppose that you need, or your family needs, 3 sacks a month. تمام? How much is the value of the transactions? قديش انت القيمة المعاملة كلها. So it's what's called the volume of a transaction. The price times the quantity. The volume transaction قيمة المبادلة كلها والمعاملة كلها قديش؟ The price is 100 shekels times the 3 equals 300 shekels, right? تمام. Now suppose that the prices increased. The prices of flour. Now suppose that the prices of a flour increased to 150 shekels per sack. تمام. And the quantity purchased remain constant. Well, Q, D remains constant at 3. Now, how much is the new volume transaction? قديش؟ would increase, صح? So, the new volume of transaction شو بتساوي؟ The new price اللي 150 times the 3 equals 450. طيب إذن if the price is increased شو بصير في volume of transaction? Would increase. So as you see in this formula, volume transaction equals P times Q. So increasing the prices leads to increasing the volume of transaction. وبالتالي we need more money to buy. صح؟ للترانزاكشن. مظبوط ولا لا؟ هلا كل ما الأسعار زادت أنت محتاج money أكثر عشان تشتري، صح؟ So increasing the prices شو بتعمل؟ leads to increasing the quantity demanded, the quantity of money demanded. صح؟ لا, the quantity demanded for money. تمام؟ شباب؟ أنت محتاج مصاري أكثر لتشتري. طيب suppose that the number of transactions increased. بمعنى مش the prices اللي زادت. The prices, suppose that the prices of flour remains constant at $100. شو اللي زاد؟ Number of units that you want to purchase, which means the number of transactions. بدل ما تشتري 3 أكياس محتاج تشتري 4. In this case, the volume of transaction would increase. صح؟ So, the increasing the volume of transaction leads to increasing the quantity of money demanded or increasing the quantity or the demand for money. تمام؟ طيب. So, طب سؤال, I have a question. مين بيشتري أكتر؟ اللي دخله عالي ولا اللي دخله منخفض؟ مين بيطلب مصاري أكثر؟ Exactly, اللي دخله أعلى بيطلب مصاري أكثر لأنه number of transactions عنده أعلى، صح؟ وبعدين بيروح بيشتري بأسعار أعلى لأنه بده يشتري بهاير quality، صح؟ مظبوط؟ وبالتالي ال value of transaction بيزيد. So let's go to this example. The transactions volume and the price levels. So as you see, when the output or income rises, إذا الدخل زاد، طبعا زيادة الدخل مع الكلام إنه في عندي number of transactions شو بصير له؟ بيزيد، تمام؟ طيب so when the output or income rises, the total number of transactions rises, صح؟ Exactly. And the demand for money curve shift to the right. So this leads to, this is the initial or the origin money supply money demand curve. This is MD1. when the income increased, the number of transactions would increase. So there is a rightward shifting of the money demand because you need more money to buy. صح? We have a rightward shifting for the money demand curve from M1, MD1 to MD2. صح? طيب, what about the prices? The same idea. Increasing the prices, as you see, increasing the prices, the price levels rises, or when the price level rises, the aggregate dollar amount for each transaction rises, which means the volume of a transaction would increase. أيوة, as you see, إنه the prices طلعت وبالتالي the volume of transaction increased. صح? Which means, or thus the quantum money demand, the money needed to engage in transaction would rise. So then the demand for money would increase, or the money demand curve will shift to the right. The same idea. So in this case, if the prices increase, شباب واضح الفكرة ولا أعيدها؟ إنه total volume transaction عبارة عن prices times quantity. زيادة increase the number of transactions معنى كلام زيادة quantity. So the volume transaction would increase. So we need more money for these transactions, so the money demand would increase, will shift to the right. And the same for the prices. لما the prices بتطلع, we need more money to buy. So the volume transaction would increase, and we have a rightward shifting of the money demand curve. So in this case, we have a rightward shifting of the demand for money. This is the MD1. MD2. This is our MD at the same interest rate. تمام؟ طبعا هذا مع ثبات interest rate. So this is the determinants of money demand. هذا الريفيو تبعنا بيقولنا ايش؟ انه interest rate is negative with the money demand, or the quantum money demanded. As we mentioned, انه increasing في R شو بتعمل؟ decrease the quantum money demanded. صح؟ كمان في عندي the dollar volume of transaction positive. ليش؟ لأنه positive with the prices and the quantity of goods, or the number of transactions. هيو the aggregate output income اللي هو هذا, لما بزيد الانكم شو بصير؟ number of transactions would increase. صح؟ So اللي هو الكيو على الفوليوم transaction, volume transaction بيساوي البي times the Q. الانكم بيزيد عمليا, number of transactions would increase, so the volume transaction بيزيد, وبالتالي money demand would shift to the right, would increase. The same لما بلي prices هيو, the price level it has a positive effect on the money demand curve. تمام؟ يعطيكم العافية.